Something happened to Kawaki when Amado restored his karma, and I'm not sure that many of you have noticed. The more he's been tapping into his power, the more he's becoming more and more like Jigen. Especially when you look at the things he was saying to Naruto when he was trying to kill Boruto and Naruto was attempting to talk him out of it. It was almost as if everything that Kawaki was learning from Naruto had been overwritten by the years of programming that Jigen was beating into him when he was preparing him to become a perfect vessel for Ishiki. Now we get to the latest events of Boruto, where Kawaki had his limiters removed and is starting to use more of Jigen's fighting style by using that chakra rod staff. Before we explore how Kawaki is turning more and more into Jigen, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. The more you go back to those chapters where he manifested his karma again to protect Naruto from Borushiki, you start to notice that these changes that are happening to Kawaki didn't start at that moment in time. They began at that point where he lost his karma seal. And that was when Kashinkoji forced Ishiki to resurrect using Jigen, who was an imperfect vessel instead of Kawaki. As much as Kawaki was relieved that he finally got rid of that thing that made him go through an insane amount of abuse and suffering, Kawaki still lost a great source of power, and the events that happened after was a constant reminder of that. He ended up being in a position where he was defenseless again. He used to get beaten and tortured physically as well as psychologically by Jigen because of the karma, so he saw it as nothing but the root of all his suffering. He never saw it as a great source of power until he didn't have it anymore. That's when he felt the same powerlessness and weakness that he felt when he was still with Jigen. He couldn't even defend himself against people like Code with his limiters on. So you can imagine how he felt when he saw Borushiki about to hit Naruto with a massive Rasengan and manifested his karma again. That feeling of weakness and powerlessness was gone and he felt unstoppable. He now had the power to do something about his situation instead of being at the mercy of it. At that point, no one could tell Kawaki what he could or couldn't do. Which is why he wasn't listening to Naruto and thought that killing Boruto was what he had to do because Naruto would never be able to do it. Refusing to listen to Naruto when he says that it doesn't have to be that way and it's not his decision to make. Even though killing Boruto was something that him and Boruto planned together, he still could have listened to Naruto and tried to save Boruto in another way. Yet Kawaki still went ahead with it, despite knowing that Naruto is against it. All that mattered to Kawaki was that Naruto didn't have the power to stop him, especially considering the fact that Naruto didn't have Kuruma's power. It showed us a shift in ideology that was happening to Kawaki, an ideology that he had learned from Jigen, and without even knowing it. What you need to know about a character like Kawaki that used to be a victim of torture and abuse is that they tend to develop ideas or behaviors that are similar to how their oppressor used to think and behave. This is referred to as imprinting, and the victim doesn't even realize that they've imprinted. Sometimes they do realize it, but they embrace it and make it their entire identity. Some of you might assume the same thing didn't happen to Kawaki, but there's details within his character that show you that it did. For example, the clothes that he wears. Haven't you ever wondered why Kawaki still wears the same symbol as Jigen on his clothes and never bothered to change it? Even currently in Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, Kawaki's jacket has the same symbol that Jigen also wears. And we know that it isn't from Kawaki's clan because it wasn't seen anywhere on his father's clothes or the house that he lived in before Jigen took him. So why is this symbol important and how does that relate to Kawaki and Jigen taking on the same ideologies or way of thinking? We first have to explain what the symbol is and the mythology behind it. Kawaki's crest depicts the closing of two ramen bowls, an object often associated with the folklore of Isunboshi, otherwise known as the One-Inch Boy, who serves as an inspiration for Ishiki. The link between Isunboshi, the One-Inch Boy from Japanese folklore, and Ishiki Otsutsuki from Boruto lies in Ishiki's design and abilities being directly inspired by Isunboshi fairy tale. Here's how the two are connected. Ishiki's name itself is a direct nod to Isunboshi. It's a similar sounding name. Just like how Isunboshi is a tiny boy, Ishiki Otsutsuki has the ability to drastically shrink himself and other objects using his Sukuna Ikona ability. The Uchida no Kuzochi, or magic mallet, in the Isunboshi tale, the protagonist defeats an ogre and obtains a magical hammer called the Uchida no Kuzochi. This mallet grants wishes, including the ability to grow in size. Ishiki Otsutsuki's Daikokuten ability allows him to store objects in a separate dimension and then summon them at will, often in a much larger size. This is seen as a direct parallel to the Uchida no Kuzochi's wish-granting and size-manipulating powers, particularly its ability to conjure things. Ishiki's connection to Isunboshi continues this tradition, providing a mythical foundation for the character's unique powers and narrative role. Essentially, Ishiki Otsutsuki is a modern, dark interpretation of the classic Japanese folk hero, twisting the One-Inch Boy's abilities into a powerful and dangerous form for the Boruto narrative. That dark interpretation means that those powers are not a force for good, but more of a representation of evil, according to the Boruto narrative. which is what Ishiki or Jigen is a representation of. Having this power makes them look down on the shinobi and the shinobi way of doing things, especially with the contrast between how easy it is for them to gain this power of theirs compared to the shinobi that have to train for years just to reach the same level of power. As we can see that example with Boruto and Kawaki. Boruto had to train for 3 years to get to a level of power where he can be a threat to something like the Shinju and even surpass Jigen's level of power. Kawaki on the other hand only had to go to Amado and get his limiters removed. Just by doing so, he had attained a level of power that is equivalent to and might even be greater than Boruto's, who had to train for years just to get there, and Kawaki only did it in just a few days. Being in that position of easily being able to attain power and become stronger can get to your head, giving you a false sense of superiority. This is something we've seen with the Otsutsuki, but more especially with Momoshiki and Jigen, also known as Ishiki. They were arrogant and self-absorbed because of the power they had, which they also attained easily. They viewed shinobi as vulgar creatures that were beneath them. Kawaki might be following in their footsteps. The more he is growing more and more powerful, the more he is going to become arrogant and start looking down on those that are weaker than him. Potentially even looking down on shinobi because he might think that the shinobi way of attaining strength is inefficient and time-consuming, to the point where he tries to destroy that system. This might be why we saw him tell Boruto that the age of shinobi is over in that time skip scene where Boruto told him that he didn't think he'd go that far. Kawaki might come to the conclusion that getting rid of the shinobi was something he had to do in order to eradicate that shinobi system. There's been a few details within the manga that show that Kawaki doesn't care about anything, like when he told Jora that love doesn't matter to him. Even if you try to argue that he cares about Naruto, I'm not so sure that he actually cares about him. What Kawaki has for Naruto is more of an obsession. He sees Naruto as something that gives him a purpose so that he doesn't feel like his life is meaningless and empty, just like Jigen was trying to program him to think. Naruto was one of the only people that could push Kawaki towards a positive path. This is why Kawaki saw it best to have Naruto sealed in the Daikokuten. It wasn't just for his protection like he said. It was also to make sure that there's no one who has enough influence over him to try and convince him not to go ahead with whatever negative ideas he might have. Without someone like Naruto, there's no stopping Kawaki from losing himself in dangerous and destructive ideologies that he might have adopted or imprinted from Jigen, even in a situation where he might see shinobi as an obstacle and try to eradicate them. This is how Kawaki might be turning into Jigen, especially when you observe his change in fighting style to using that chakra rod staff like Jigen, and also his choice to continue wearing the same symbol as the character that was the biggest source of his suffering. That symbol has a deeper meaning than just being something that Jigen used to wear. It symbolizes that Jigen is still a part of Kawaki. Even though Jigen is dead and Ishiki is also dead, it doesn't mean that Kawaki is completely free of them or their influence. This is just my analysis on Kawaki's character, looking at multiple details within his character development. So let me know what y'all think about Kawaki's character and whether or not you think he's becoming more and more like Jigen or Otsutsuki. Subscribe to the channel for more Boruto content.